the FAA's website states. They include
This is from the FAA's website.
hearing, vision, missing extremities,
Hearing and vision and missing extremities?
partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of.
Okay. It is not debatable that someone was trying to sabotage us. And when I say somebody, I'm not talking about a human. I'm talking about the left was so psychopathic that they literally were willing to sacrifice people's lives on the altar of their ideology, on their cult of identitarian victimhood. They signed into law with their DEI initiatives representation for people with, quote, psychiatric disabilities to be represented at equal rates in the aviation industry. To any sane person, that is beyond absurd. It's something out of a Michael Scott episode at The Office. But to the left, that's just how you appease the gods of resentment. And this comes right after a horrific incident where a helicopter collided with a passenger plane. They both ended up in the Potomac, and Trump has just announced less than 2 hours ago that there have been no survivors. The water was very cold.
FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them.
Yeah, I wonder why people with severe psychiatric disabilities are not equally representative in the workforce, much less air traffic control. Oh my gosh, you have to be kidding me, bro.
They can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. This was
What?
on January 14th, so that was.
Imagine being like, God forbid, like putting yourself in this mental framework, but imagine being one of the families, right? Thinking about the fact that the Biden administration calls themselves good people, that they call themselves compassionate. But then again, there are families like the mother of Lincoln Riley who has to watch as Selena Gomez cries on X that, oh my gosh, we're deporting them. Like, you know?
A week before I entered office, they put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program.
Because as I talked about in my most recent video and the video before that, the left is just a cult of anti-reality. They just invert truth. So they knew that accountability was coming, and so they took all the actions they could to spite reality itself. It's like a child trying to spite their parents in a very petty, childish way. That's what they were like. But of course it's much worse because they're driven by the resentment of ideology as well.
Another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people.
I can't believe what I'm hearing. But I can believe what I'm hearing because this is the left. Again, literally sacrificing. Guys, I'm not using a metaphor because in this instance, it's literally a sacrifice like the Aztecs did to appease the sun god. They would sacrifice children or they would sacrifice animals so that the weather would be good. The left is sacrificing our society and the lives and safety of the American citizens out of a pure resentment for truth, for category, coherence, individuality, logic, reason, rationality, accountability. Every single thing that provably demonstrates their ideology is fraudulent and counterfeit, they go to war with.
That are, I mean, actually, their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened.
It's, guys, you want any type of person to be an air traffic controller? Are you serious? Like, obviously, most people would agree. If you ask them, if you're in an airplane, right, and you're in turbulence, first of all the atheists immediately become believers, which is very interesting to see. But also, who do you want to fly that airplane? I'm not going to say the alternatives because that wouldn't go well for the algorithm, but you would want a guy with gray hair, with white hair, who's been doing it for 45 years. So these people are insane. They are truly enemies of civilization. This is why we beat them. But I'm realizing this is only the beginning, because an ideology which would deliberately put less competent people as air traffic controllers to appease an ideology, that's the definition of dangerous. That's like a destructive ideology, the likes of which we thought we had vanquished.
Because of the stress, where you have many, many planes coming into one target, and you need a very special talent and a very special genius to be able to do it. Targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. The FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete
Wait, excuse me?
and hiring. The FAA's website states they include
This is from the FAA's website.
hearing, vision, missing extremities,
Hearing and vision and missing extremities?
partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position
Okay. It is not debatable that someone was trying to sabotage us. And when I say somebody, I'm not talking about a human. I'm talking about an entity that's definitionally evil, definitionally aligned against truth, against logic, against rationality, always trying to do warfare with those that would use logic or reason or rationality. This type of thing, to say we need somebody who is severely mentally impaired with vision and hearing problems to be an air traffic controller, that a person doesn't say that. Now, I'm just going to say it because it's true, and I'm not sure if people are there with me, but that's not human, okay? That is inhuman. That's not derivative of a person. That's derivative of an entity of unfathomable resentment, evil of ridiculous proportions.
A controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion
And you know what's
hiring
crazy
plan.
too, guys, is they're definitely like that. You already know that the people who are about to ask Trump questions are going to ask him questions like, "Are you saying that we should have diversity?" Like, instead of using their brains, because they're in service to that same evil that I just described.
And think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't
If
think
diversity is central to your mission, what is your mission? What is your mission? What are you doing?
so. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite.
When you pull up to a taco truck, you're not like, "Why is there not a Korean man inside? Where is the Korean man?" No. You want the taco.
FAA website shows that the agency's guidance on diversity hiring were last updated on March 23rd of 22. They wanted to make it even more so. And then I came in, and I assume maybe this is the reason. The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a real winner. That's the guy's
Oh, good. Oh, good.
a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run the Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit. The Department of Transportation is government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it, 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity. A group within the FAA, another story, determined that the workforce was too white, that they had concerted efforts to get the administration to change that and to change it immediately.
That's just racism. That is literally just looking at a quota of race and then saying We need to change. See, this is the reason why I disagreed with some people that were psyoped into hating H-1Bs, because when these like fringe people on the right were coming out against Elon and against Trump, by the way, because Elon and Trump were in agreement on H-1B visas, I was like, so why do we care? No one should care about the quota of skin color. We should care about competence. That's literally the only thing that matters. How are you going to go to an organization, a chess club, for instance? Because I played chess for many years in a chess club, competed. You walk in to the tournament and you see there's so many Indian kids. Are you going to have like a quota at the start that says like we need to have like more white people or something? That would be ridiculous because you're excluding people that should be there. Why would you exclude anyone that should be there? Because the metrics that decide if you should be there are based on merit, competence. Competence is a derivative apparatus for objective reality itself, for deriving objective reality, because competence most technically mirrors reality so that we can build civilization. That's the reason why competent men can build civilization. So why, any person that would look at an organization and say there's too many people based on race, that is absurd. We have to get to a place where everyone, and I mean people on the left, can look at that and realize this is ridiculous. That is definitionally insane. You are insane. You are racist and insane, actually. You are racist and insane.
This was in the Obama administration just prior to my getting there. And we took care of African Americans, Hispanic Americans. We took care of everybody at levels that nobody's ever seen before. It's one of the reasons I won. But they actually came out with a directive to white. And we want the people that are competent. So we all saw the same thing. We've seen it many times. I've had the honor of hearing tapes. Tapes are scary, very scary tapes. You had a airliner coming in, American Airlines. He was doing everything right. He was on track. He was the same track as
Okay, this is breaking news.
everybody else. They came in. It's probably the same track as they've had for 25 years or more. He's coming in the path. And for some reason, he had a helicopter that was at the same height, obviously when they hit, but pretty much the same height, and going at an angle that was unbelievably bad. When the air traffic controller said, do you see, he was talking about, do you see him? But there was very little time left when that was stated. And then also he said,
air traffic controller said, do you see him? That's not a normal thing for them to say. I know because my dad was a flight controller for the space shuttle, a bit of a higher level than air traffic control. That's not how these people communicate. That's not a normal communication pattern. So that's instant red flag to me.
Said, do you see, he was talking about, do you see him? But there was very little time.
First of all, you never even phrase information or communication that way at that level. Everything is planned and rehearsed. The reason why you wouldn't phrase something like that is because it's an open-ended question that could mean a lot of things. See him could mean so many things. Every bit of information that is put through the radio from the pilot's end and the flight traffic controller's end has to be ultra specific.
Time left when that was stated. And then, do you see him? But there was very little time left when that was stated. And then also he said, follow him in. And then almost immediately after that, seconds after that, there was the crash that took place.
Okay, so that is, I think this is clearly now the incompetence of the flight controller. It's been determined. The air traffic controller, excuse me. It's the incompetence of them.
You follow them in. That means like everything's fine. Follow them in.
Right. So it was their fault.
You had a pilot problem from the standpoint of the helicopter. I mean, because it was visual. It was a very clear night. It was cold but clear, and clear as you could.
The thing is, people can start to second guess themselves in situations like that. If you're getting orders from the tower, they're trained to always listen to the tower. Always listen to the tower. If you're not listening to your flight navigation from the airline perspective of you listen to your autopilot, if it says climb, you climb. That's the doctrine. I've watched many documentaries on this, breaking down how different crashes and disasters have happened from airlines. And the doctrine is now you're supposed to listen to the orders from the computer. Always listen to the orders from the computer. I'm not sure if they have the same auditory orders in the Black Hawk, but again, they would be listening to the flight deck. Not they wouldn't be relying purely on their visual. Although maybe they'll change the doctrine and they should rely on the visual, because obviously if you're flying in front of and you see an airplane, you're going to have questions. Why are they telling me to fly here?
B, the American Airlines plane had lights blazing. They had all of their landing lights on. I could see it from the Kennedy Center tape. We had a tape up on the Kennedy Center. That seems to be the primary. Thus far, I'm sure we'll see other tapes because it's such an area where there are a lot of cameras looking up into the air, into space. So we'll probably see many other shots of it before too much time goes by. But we had a situation where you had a helicopter that had the ability to stop. I have helicopters. You can stop a helicopter very quickly. It had the ability to go up or down. It had the ability to turn. And the turn it made was not the correct turn, obviously. And it did somewhat the opposite of what it was told. We don't know that would have been the difference because the timing was so tight. It was so little. There was so little time to think. But what you did have is you had vision. The helicopter had vision of the plane because you had vision of it all the way, perfect vision of it all the way from at Kennedy Center where the...
This sounds like a woman driving a car, I'm going to be honest. When you see, I don't know if you've been in the passenger seat with a woman driving, and you're sure that there's going to be an accident because she just is continuing to do something, and you can tell that she's not going to change for some reason. You just know for some reason in your bones that she's not gonna fix her mistake, and then luckily you get bailed out by chance or the hand of fate or something, and there isn't an accident. But yeah, it sounds kind of like that. I want to know who the pilot of the helicopter was
taken, and for some reason there weren't adjustments made. Again, you could have slowed down the helicopter substantially. You could have stopped the helicopter. You could have gone up. You could have gone down. You could have gone straight up, straight down. You could have turned. You could have done a million different maneuvers. For some reason, it just kept going and then made a...
He's describing crashes involving women on the road.
Slight turn at the very end, and by that time it was too late.
Interestingly, that failure to deviate is also a failure to take responsibility for the objective world, which is something you see in women today. And I guess women for all time, but women many years ago, like 100 years ago, going back to the beginning of time, relied on men to do that for them. Now they're boss queens, so they just crash the car on their own.
They shouldn't have been at the same height, because if it was at the same height, you could
I really want to know if the pilot was a boss queen now.
Gone under it or over it, and nobody realized, or they didn't say that it's at the same height. At the same height, it still wouldn't have been great, but you would have missed it by quite a bit. Could have been 1,000 feet higher. It could have been 200 feet lower. But it was exactly at the same height, and somebody should have been able to point that out. So all of this is going to be studied, but it just seems to me, from a couple of words that I like to use, the words common sense, some really bad things happened. We're going to take a few questions.
On DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know.
This woman literally read out to her the standards of the previous administration, which would map directly onto this outcome, which we all observed, versus the standards that Trump is putting in place. And she continued to ask the question anyway, just like the woman on the road that continues in the straight line, oh, I'm going to crash now, because they can't take responsibility for what they hear. You live in reality. What type of question is that? Pathetic. Pathetic. Oh my gosh, I can't say that on YouTube, bro. What I was about to say.
Oh, that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that, and we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior, and that's what we're going to have. Yeah, yeah, please, go ahead.
President, you mentioned at the top of the briefing that there were several Russian nationals on the flight.
Yes.
Will the U.S. government be willing to facilitate the transfer of their remains, considering
Yes, we
the
will.
fact there is no direct air travel between the two countries?
We've already been in contact with Russia, and the answer is yes, we will facilitate. Yes. Please, go ahead.
Thank you,
Notice
Mr.
how the man's question was really good and made sense and was valuable.
President.
Okay, here's a woman. Let's see how it goes.
The situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is getting worse, even though President João Lourenço has been mediating the conflict between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo because he wants to bring
Why are you talking about the Congo? Like,
peace and stability. The situation is really bad right now. I want to hear from
Donald Trump is thinking the same thing as me.
Mr. President if you have any plan in the future to bring peace in the
Well, you're
Democratic
asking me a
Republic
question
of the
about
Congo.
Rwanda, and it is a very serious problem. I agree, but I don't think it's appropriate right now to talk about it. But
Right,
it is
it's ridiculous. Why are you asking about Rwanda and the Congo?
a very serious problem.
We don't even yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right
No,
now?
I don't think so at all. I don't think whether
The left is used to being able to hide their incompetence through obfuscation. That is no longer possible given that competent men are in charge.
names of the people. You mean the names of the people that are on the plane? You think that's going to make a difference?
Does it comfort their families
They
to
are
hear you
a
blaming
group of
DEI
people that have
policies?
lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question.
But are you
I'm
blaming-
surprised coming from you.
Are you blaming air traffic?
Please,
Thank
please.
you. Thank you, President Trump. Thank you for being here.
Owned and destroyed. Again, dude, the women are 0 for 3. 0 for 3.
Based on your analysis so far, do you have a sense of who was at fault? If it was the plane, the helicopter, air traffic control, and can you assure people that it is safe
Another low IQ question by a woman.
to fly
What's
in
going
and
on?
out of D.C.?
Well, I've given you the analysis, and the analysis was
Literally, you already had that.
it was based on vision. You had a lot of people that saw what was happening. You had some people that knew what was happening. There was some warnings, but the warnings were given very, very late. You know, those warnings were given very late. It was almost as they were given a few seconds later, there was a crash.
If this had happened under Biden, none of this transparency would be happening. They wouldn't probably even talk about the incompetence of people at play because they don't want to acknowledge that an objective world exists. If they talk about competence, then that inversely correlates to incompetence, which they have to take accountability for, and they can't take accountability for anything because that's oppression. So you see how the left is really just averse to anything that is based on truth-making.
It should have been brought up earlier. But the people in the helicopter should have seen where they were going. I can't imagine people with 20/20 vision not seeing, what's happening up there. Again, they shouldn't have been at the same height. You're going in reverse directions or sideways directions. Obviously, you want to be at different heights. I see it all the time when I'm flying. You have planes going in the opposite. They're always lower. We're higher. So if somehow there's a screw-up, there's not going to be a tragedy. It'll be close. But, there's never going to be a tragedy if you're at a different elevation. For whatever reason, they were at the same elevation. And also, from the American Airlines standard, he's along the track that every plane is along. You say, what was a helicopter doing in that track? It's very sad. But visually, somebody should have been able to see and taken that helicopter out of play. And they should have been at a different height.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned the Russians that were on board that plane. What other nationalities were on board that passenger
There
jet?
were a couple of others. We're going to be announcing it in about an hour. We have some very specific information. We're calling the countries. We've spoken to most of them, but there were some other countries represented.
Spoken to President Putin?
I have not, no.
Mr. President, on your executive order,
Not about this.
on your executive order, you've already issued an executive order you say will restore aviation safety.
Right.
This crash happened after that. Was the executive order successful, and what more needs to change to keep people safe?
Well, we issued it 3 days ago, and we were.
It means that the hiring from now onward is going to be based on merit, not this diversity. But that doesn't mean that the hiring that took place before, getting people in places that they shouldn't be, didn't happen.
We're in the process of making those changes. This is something that should have been done a long time ago. Actually, my original order should have never been changed, and I think maybe you wouldn't have had this problem. Maybe. Yeah, please, go
Yes,
ahead.
thank you. We see like everyday life that very often those diversity hires cause sometimes issues, as you just mentioned. So what plan do you have? Are we going to see some fire? Are you going to fire some of those diversity hire in the federal government? What's plan do you have?
I would say the answer is yes. If we find that people aren't mentally competent, you see the language. The language is put out by them. And if you see that, I'm not going to bore you by reading it again, but these are not people that should be doing this particular job. They'd be very good for certain jobs, but not people that should be doing this particular job.
Mr. President, you have today blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistake. We then said perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
It's all under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this.
Just read out the analysis, literally read out the standards under the Biden administration for air traffic controllers. Severe psychiatric disabilities, severe mental disabilities, cognitive disabilities, hearing and sight disabilities. Like, that's insane.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. We want brilliant people doing this. This is a major chess game at the highest level. When you have 60 planes coming in during a short period of time, and they're all coming in different directions, and you're dealing with very high-level computer work and very complex computers. And one of the other things I will tell you is that the systems that were built, I was going to rebuild the entire system, and then we had an election that didn't turn out the way it should have. But they didn't build the systems properly. They spent a lot of money renovating a system, spending much more money than they would have spent if they bought a new system for air traffic controllers, meaning the computerized systems. There are certain companies that do a very good job. They didn't use those companies. They used companies that should not have been doing it. No, I think it's very important to understand that for some jobs, and not only this, but air traffic controllers, they have to be at the highest level of genius. Okay.
I want to ask you about the ice skaters in a moment because the U.S. Ice Skating Committee was affected. But first, if I can, the cited FAA text that you read is real. But the implication that this policy is new or that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's
Who said
website.
That, you?
No, it's on the website, the FAA's website. It was there in 2013. It was there for the entirety.
What I read.
It was there for the entirety of your administration
Nice and
too.
easy.
So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first administration?
I did change it. I changed the Obama policy, and we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in, and he changed it. And then when I came in 3 days ago, I signed a new order bringing it to the highest level of intelligence. Okay.
It was on the website.
Please. Quiet.
Welcome back to that's how you own misinformation puppets that are desperate to adhere to propaganda. It's really, really easy, and it shows how pathetic they are.
You mentioned that a vision was probably the problem that was at issue in this crash. There's been some reports that one of the pilots in the helicopter may have been using night vision equipment. Was there any indication?
I heard that. We don't know. We're going to know that pretty soon. It may change your view plane if you do have the night vision. So it's very possible that could have happened. That would be maybe a reason why you wouldn't actually see as well as on a clear night. You can see sometimes better without it. Have a couple of more.
Mr. President, is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly?
Go to what?
Is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, And does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees?
People like you, a female question again. Like, does it help to have your Secretary of Transportation confirm? Yes. Like what?
Quickly as well.
Well, sure. We want fast confirmations.
What type of question is that? What type of question is that, dude?
The Democrat.
Anyway, I think this video speaks for itself. If you're watching, be sure to subscribe. If you're still watching, scroll down and click become a member. Link in description. Costs less than the price of a coffee. Helps combat censorship and fund the channel since we're demonetized. YouTube doesn't like truth, just like these ideologically possessed reporters can't stand truth or reality. I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. I appreciate you all.